I entered the largest Pokemon TCG tournament of all time. Over 4,500 ambitious competitors, all fighting for the glory, the cash, a place in history. This was the North American International Championships. To most people, Pokemon is a hobby, whether you're a collector, casual player, or just love cracking a few packs. But for me, this is serious business. I wasn't flying across the entire world for a bit of fun. This was the absolute pinnacle of competition. All the world's best in a single room, $500,000 on the line, and I wanted to win. I knew that I could win.
Yeah, I'm probably going to put this clip in the video when I post the one about me winning NAIC.
But to actually get that trophy, I was going to need more than just my incredible TCG skills and even better mustache. For a tournament of this caliber, I was going to need an equally extraordinary deck to set myself apart from the rest of the competition. Previously, I've seen the most success when I bring absolutely cooked off-meta piles of 60 cards and take everyone by surprise. So that's exactly what I set out to do. 3 weeks before the event, I was busy perfecting a new iteration of Zoroark, a deck I was sure almost no one else would be playing. My plan was to breathe fresh life into this underrated archetype with a newly released card, Team Rocket's Venture Bomb. I made a whole video deep diving into this concept. But basically, when paired with Munkidori, Reshiram, and the ridiculous draw engine provided by Trade, you get a seriously spicy combination that has incredible matchups into the top 3 best performing decks. However, it can struggle against the more aggressive options like Raging Bolt and Joltik Box. But that wasn't anywhere near enough to dissuade me from playing this cooked concoction. The deck was genuinely incredibly strong, and the more I tested it, the more I believed in its potential. When I hopped on the plane out of Australia less than a week before the tournament, it was the only deck on my mind for the entire 20-hour flight. Once I landed in New Orleans, it was the only deck I tested Sunday night. On Monday, I was completely locked in on playing it. All through Tuesday, I continued to grind games on the deck, and it felt amazing. And then, that same night, I threw it in the bin. What? The tournament is this Friday. What was I doing? Trust me, it wasn't for lack of the deck's potential, and the results of those who did end up playing it definitely prove that. I was just introduced to something even better by some wonderful fellas. I met Marnie's Grimmsnarl. This newly released archetype was deceptively strong. 320 HP and 180 damage on a stage 2 Pokemon really doesn't seem like much on paper, especially when you compare it to some of the other ridiculous options like Dragapult or Gardevoir. But there are so many other factors at play here. The ability Punk Up lets it accelerate more energy than you'd ever need. The fact that it's Dark type means you're smacking for weakness into Gardevoir, the #1 deck to beat. And unlike Charizard EX, Marnie's Grimmsnarl is a real Dark type Pokemon. None of that fake Terra stuff. Meaning your deck is naturally full of dark energy to fuel the most powerful Pokemon in the game right now, Munkidori. On top of all that, you get access to the most broken stadium in the game right now, Spikemuth Gym. Unlike Artisan, which is handing out free basics, this is completely one-sided. If your opponent isn't playing Grimmsnarl, they are getting nothing out of this. It lets you search your deck for any of Marnie's fellas that can be basics or evolutions without any downside. The value this stadium adds to the A-Spec secret box is absolutely absurd. Oh, and we can't forget about Grimmy's partner in crime, Frostlass. This Icy Ghost's Freezing Shroud ability perfectly complements the rest of the deck, racking up damage on both sides of the board, accelerating Munkidori's Adrenabrain capabilities, and easily allowing you to pivot towards an alternative spread damage focused game plan in certain matchups and board states. So okay, Grimmothy Snarl is strong, sure, but it was lining up to be a top 3 meta deck. How was I meant to separate myself from the hundreds of other people looking to lock in Marnie's menace? Well, this tournament was actually different to most others. It was the first major event where the newest set, Destined Rivals, would be legal for competitive play. Usually I'd need to craft some insane off-meta creation to gain a significant advantage in the deck building department. But in this case, no one really had a perfect 60 card baseline for these fresh new archetypes. This opened up the opportunity for us to be the first group of players who really cracked the Marnie's deck. So what did we do to set ourselves apart? The core of our deck was still just the classic pairing of Frostlass and Marnie's Grimmsnarl. A thinner Grimline than usual at 3/2/2, sure, but nothing insane. However, the heart of the deck stemmed from a card that no one else was playing, Pheasantipity EX. That's crazy, right? It's one of the most played cards in the entire standard format, and Grimmsnarl is an archetype that is in desperate need of card draw. Without Fez, your late game hands can be a lot less reliable, leaving you susceptible to devastating Ionos. So why was everyone neglecting this script flipping bird? It's primarily because of how they were building their decks. Most players were opting for a Pokemon search engine consisting of the incredibly broken Spikemas Stadium, Artisan for Monkey Dories, a couple Buddy Buddy Poffin for Snorunt and Impidimp, and a single Ultra Ball, primarily to find their evolution Pokemon. But with this engine, that single card would be their only way to access Pheasantipity. When viewed from this angle, it's obvious why no one was playing it. No matter how powerful of an ability Flip the Script may be, it is completely useless if you can't find it at the right time. However, it seems that everyone was simply missing a puzzle piece. 3 of them actually. Nest Ball. Most lists weren't even running a single copy of this incredibly efficient item. It not only provided easy access to Pheasantipity at almost any point in the match, but moreover allowed for the complete exclusion of Artisan from the list. With Nest Balls to search out Monkey Dory, it was no longer required and could instead be replaced by a higher count of Spikemuth Gym. I keep saying it, but this is the most broken stadium in the current meta. I was genuinely glad to finally cut Artisan from the list so I could stop giving my opponent free basic Pokemon. Beyond this drastic change to the consistency engine, we also followed the natural drift towards playing more and more Boss's Orders. When the deck first hit the scene at Champions League Aichi, the 4 Marnie's players in top 16 all ran 1 boss and 3 counter catches. Looking back, it's crazy that they got away with this. Most people immediately adapted a 2-2 split, understanding the importance of unconditional gusting, particularly in matchups like Gardevoir, Dragapult, and the Marnie's Mirror. So we took the next logical step and bumped up the gusting again, now playing 3 Boss's Orders while maintaining 2 counter catches. We also adjusted the usual support account to provide even more raw draw, cutting down to 3 Arven in order to make room for 4 Professor's Research. This change was inspired by the similar metamorphosis previously undergone by the other top meta decks. Both Gardevoir and Dragapult had started off as quad Arven builds, but had eventually evolved to adopt a draw supporter heavy engine with 4 Research and 4 Iono. This decision also had the side effect of increasing our Night Stretch account. With more awkward discards in the name of Professor's Research, Stretcher stocks were through the roof. But honestly, this is just another one of the most broken cards in the game right now. I genuinely can't believe how so many people only played a single copy in their lists. 3 felt incredible, and it absolutely wouldn't have been the same tournament without them. So, by the time my body was comfortably tucked into bed on Tuesday night, my mind was absolutely racing with the stress of a last-minute deck change. I'd be going from over 2 weeks of practice on End Zoroark to just 2 days of practice with this Marnie's Grimmsnarl build. But I could clearly see the immense potential in redefining an already broken meta threat, and was very confident in my ability to pick up and quickly master a new deck. I was going to need an insane training regime though. Wednesday morning and I wake up at 4:30 AM thanks to that wonderful Australian jet lag. I love a good 15-hour time difference. I smash some cereal from a plastic cup because the room doesn't have any bowls, and then prepare myself for 16 hours of non-stop gaming. This is legitimately the most locked in I've ever been, and I ignored way too many phone calls throughout the day. Sorry fellas. By the end of it all, I just felt like I was at one with the deck. All of my thoughts completely aligned with Grimmothy Snarl, and at that point I was absolutely hooked. I'd only just picked up the deck, but I already felt like I couldn't lose. Genuinely struggling to find any serious weaknesses and absolutely bursting with confidence. There was no way I could keep up this pace for another full day without completely burning myself out though. But luckily I was now feeling comfortable enough to tone it down a notch on Thursday and chill out for a bit. I checked in, grabbed my swag bag and made sure to hit up the Pokemon Center, so I could once again be disappointed by the lack of any Psyduck sweater stock. I also had a quick side quest to get Fernando some cards. Last year's world champ was struggling struggling to lock in a deck, so I might have encouraged him to make this questionable choice. But he loved the idea as soon as I showed it to him, and he really enjoyed playing it at the tournament. I might have to make a video on this monstrosity sometime. After that, the remainder of the afternoon was dedicated to discussing the 59th and 60th card choices with the fellas. It was down to Night Stretcher or Energy Search and either Nest Ball or Ultra Ball. This was a tough decision, but honestly, not an incredibly impactful one. I'd much rather spend the final night debating a consistency option as opposed to a completely different deck choice or a matchup defining tech card. It was a sign that we were extremely prepared and the deck was fundamentally strong. This last decision was just the icing on the cake that was going to win me the North American International Championships. You want to hear more about every decision that went into this 60 as well as other potential card inclusions, matchups, and key concepts? Then join my channel members as a Pokemon TCG improver and check out the full exclusive breakdown right after you finish this video. Or if you'd rather not give YouTube any money but still want to support me, I've just set up a Patreon and it's available there too. Thanks, fellas. Okay, so the full 60 is finally locked in. Why am I still awake so late on Thursday night? There's a tournament tomorrow and I desperately need some more sleep. I was busy witnessing the birth of Zoroark Dragapult, Henry's insane last-minute creation, and Stefan really did end up doing it justice with a top 32 placement. Alright, now it's time to get some rest before the biggest competition I've ever played in. It's just another major without any sleep. What could go wrong? Fortunately, we're staying within walking distance, so I've got plenty of time to get ready. But when I do finally reach the venue, I am met with my first serious challenge of the tournament. Although the first round pairings have just come up, I still need to make it through round 0. See, I started my morning by smashing 2 coffees, and now I need to use the bathroom. But there's an issue. Just look at the size of that line. There is no way I'll be able to go in time. I'm gonna have to choose between a very unfortunate accident and being late to my first match. While weighing up the pros and cons of both options, my guardian angel appears out of nowhere to inform us all that there is another bathroom at the other end of the venue. This guy might as well have just saved my life. And now, with that out of the way, it was time for round 1. Wouldn't you believe it? I was already up against a Tim Danklin enjoyer. You should be like her and subscribe to the channel. Actually, a lot of my opponents were, and it was really nice to meet so many of you throughout the weekend. Anyway, she was on Gardevoir, a matchup I tested extensively the night before. But she started off game 1 with Raw Secret Box in the opening hand, and I was drawing dead. Does this seriously need to happen round 1 of every major tournament? I even wrote it down. My opening hand was Grimmsnarl, 2 counter catches, Frostlass, TM Evo, and a Night Stretcher with Impidimp in the active. But I rip Arven off the top and I'm right back into the game. I'm able to search out Secret Box to at least have something to do over the next couple turns. But without any energy, I'm not able to use Technical Machine Evolution, and just have to settle for setting up my basics and holding on to an Iono for the following turn. My opponent is rapidly building up a powerful board, and on my second turn, I'm ripping that Iono into absolutely nothing. I just announced Filch for an extra draw. But it's not as bad as it seems. Thanks to the new Shaman from Destined Rivals, it's actually beneficial to be even or behind in prizes against Gardevoir. With the Grassy Hedgehog in play and most Gardevoir lists opting for 2 counter catches without any boss's orders, their usual method of tearing apart your bench with Screamtail is completely invalidated, and they're instead just forced to accept whichever prizes you feed them from the active. I happily let her take the first 2 with Lily's Clefairy EX, then finally evolve up my Grimmsnarl and punch into it. It's not enough to get the KO, but I didn't want to. She's board locked out of playing Drifloon and therefore has no way to one-shot Grimmsnarl's beefy 320 HP. And since Countercatcher is offline and Shaman is in play, she has no way to get around it either. So all she can do is attack for 220 with Moonlight Rondo, exactly as I planned. I use my own Countercatcher to bring up Gardevoir, move 60 damage off of Grimmsnarl onto Curlier, courtesy of a couple of Monkey Dory, and then finish them both off thanks to weakness and the 30 damage from Shadow Bullet, leaving my opponent with no way to set up another Gardevoir for at least a few more turns. She responds with a KO using the remaining Clefairy, but it's too late at this point, and I finish it off, leaving her without any attackers or ways to power up new ones. We're on to game 2, I'm going first, and I just pass, without any playable cards in my opening hand. Oh, and of course, once again, she starts off with Raw Secret Box. Absolutely insane. Fortunately, on my second turn, I can Arven for my own Secret Box. Secret Box is prized. It's fine, I'll just grab a Buddy Buddy Poffin instead. That's also prized. On top of that, both of my Snorunt are prized as well. I just Nest Ball for a lone Impidimp and pass the turn, looking longingly at my prize cards. I'm starting off with a huge disadvantage again, but it's still 100% winnable. We eventually reach a board state where she once again has Gardevoir and Curlier in play, and has just attacked with a heavily damaged Drifloon. I don't have any access to Gusting to repeat the same magic as last game, but I do notice two key details. The first is that there is no Curlier underneath that Gardevoir, and the second is that both of her rare candies are in the bin. I'm able to finish off the active Drifloon with Munkidori's Adrenabrain, and then rip TM Devolution to leave just 2 Ralts in play. There is a Clefairy with an energy on the bench, but it really doesn't want to punch into my active Grimmsnarl. Since I've only got 2 prizes remaining, even with a Bravery Charm, double Munkidori plus Shadow Bullet would be enough for game. She responds with her second and final Countercatcher to bring up and trap my Shaman, paired with a Disruptive Iono to set me down to just 2 cards in hand. But she had to bench Pheasantipity in order to reach this combo and is now board locked. Each of us are stuck with exactly 2 Munkidori in play, and the game devolves into a stalemate of passing the same 60 damage back and forth. However, the conclusion is inevitable. While she's completely out of options, it's only a matter of time until I find an energy to retreat and boss's orders to win the game. I lock up my first win of the tournament. Before I know it, I'm sitting down for round 2 playing against another Grimmsnarl. Usually I try to avoid playing mirror matches, generally opting for rogue strategies where no one else is going to be on the same deck as me. But this time, I feel like my list not only has a reasonable edge against other Grimmies, thanks to the high count of boss's orders, Nest Ball, and absence of Artisan, but it's also just a fundamentally more skill-based mirror than most, where you can absolutely capitalize on a less experienced player's mistakes. Unfortunately, this is extremely difficult when your hand is completely unplayable, which just so happens to be the case in Game 1. I make the mistake of drawing it out all the way to its conclusion. But in my defense, my opponent was giving me way too many opportunities to make a comeback. And in the end, it all came down to him drawing exactly Rare Candy and Grimmsnarl off of an Iono to 2 after I used TM Devolution, which of course he did manage to hit. Anyway, I shake it off and pick second going into Game 2. My start is far from perfect, but I'm able to bring it back before things get out of hand, abusing my access to 3 boss's orders to gain an enormous advantage in the Munkidori war, bringing things all the way to a Game 3. Despite struggling with my 3rd consecutive poor start of the set, for once my opponent actually has an even worse end of the stick, just benching 2 Impidimps and passing right back. Thanks to an Arven off the top, I'm able to take a massive early 3 prize lead with a dominating board position. The win is all but guaranteed, but there is one other inevitability: the clock ticking down to 0. And well aware of it, my opponent is able to stall out until time is called. But I can still win this. We each have 2 additional turns until the game is considered a tie. All I need is a second Munkidori right now, and I'll be able to set myself up for game on the final turn. With neither a Dark Energy or way to find Munkidori in hand, all I can do is rip Professor's Research and cross my fingers. 7 fresh new cards and no way to get that additional monkey online. I just have to attack, and despite the blatant discrepancy in board states, my opponent is able to flip their unwinnable position into a tie. At the end of the day, it's completely up to him, but I might have cared a little bit less if he hadn't just dropped from the tournament 3 rounds later. Whatever, on to the next one, and fortunately this time the vibes are way better. I'm up against another incredibly based fan, and he's actually in the same boat as me. Frustrated with not being 2-0 and very keen to avoid another tie. We are both absolutely determined to finish a full 3-game set. We each make a conscious effort to do as much shuffling and prize checking on each other's turns whenever possible. And I think more people really need to start doing this, especially with the upcoming changes to time rules next season. He's playing the Rocket Spidops deck, and despite being a very unpopular pick, it actually has a solid matchup into Grimmothy Snarl on paper. Spidops can easily power itself up, and with a full bench of Rocket's Pokemon, it's dealing more than enough to one-shot my main attacker after you account for weakness. In Game 1, I'm able to aggressively set up Frostlass and feed him the first 3 prizes while racking up damage thanks to Freezing Shroud. At that point, an Iono paired with back-to-back Grimmsnarls is enough to wipe all of their spiders. I am really glad that this little guy only has 50 HP. With my opponent's board void of any way to make a meaningful attack, I lock up Game 1. However, the next one is nowhere near as smooth. My start is seriously rough, but I've got exactly 1 saving grace: Badoo and Boss's orders to bring up a bench Spidops with no energy. energy. He made the crucial mistake of preemptively evolving it without having any energy in the bin. This takes its retreat cost from a simple hand attach to a much more costly 2 energy. And this is very relevant since under item lock he is seriously struggling to find that energy. I get an insane 8 turns of Itchy Pollen on the spider before it finally escapes from the active. You'd think this would be game winning on its own, but the entire time I was completely dead drawing. And although I do eventually set up, it's not pretty. It all comes down to an Iono to 1. He rips a Rocket's Transceiver and Grass Energy, either of which would have given him game on the spot. Luckily, despite playing 2 full games of a relatively lengthy matchup, we've been keeping up the pace and have plenty of time for a third. And this time, I've got a plan. I'll be honest, I didn't extensively test this matchup before the tournament. I just didn't have the time to and really didn't expect to hit any. But throughout these first couple games, I've been figuring out a lot. It's actually kind of difficult for the Team Rockets deck to fill out their board with 6 Rockets Pokemon after you take a multi-prize turn. But if you've ticked 20 damage onto your own Grimmsnarl with Frostlass, they'll only need 5 Rockets Pokemon for the KO, which is much more achievable. So this time, although I do establish an early Frostlass into play, I intentionally push it active after I've racked up enough damage on both sides of the board. Once he takes the bait and gets rid of it, I evolve up into a crucially full 320 HP Grimmsnarl. Pair this with an Iono to 3 and knockouts on 2 of his Rockets Pokemon. With only a 4-card hand, he is unable to piece together both a follow-up attacker and 2 more benched Pokemon to actually reach the KO in response. Off of that single whiffed turn, I'm able to lock up game 3 and the set. I'm feeling really good after that one. I'm locked in, playing well, and actually thinking about each of my decisions. In the next round, I'm up against Mike Fouché. He's been playing Gardevoir to major events since I was like 9 years old, and guess what? He's doing it again today. He may have well over a decade more Pokemon experience than I do, but you know what I have? A really clean start and a favorable matchup. In fact, I managed to set up so fast that I actually get the chance to go aggressive and take a significant prize lead, deleting his only Gardevoir EX, and with my Shaman still in play, preventing any Screamtail shenanigans. From there, the game is pretty much over. However, game 2 is not quite as straightforward. I have to go first and open with exactly Shaman, Attach, Pass. Just getting ready to announce Smash Kick, obviously. Fortunately, I do have an Arven in hand for my second turn, and he rightfully doesn't play any hand disruption given my abysmal start. At this point, I'm essentially only 1 turn down, and once I kickstart the engine using Arven for TM Evo and Buddy Buddy Poffin, I don't slow down. With my Shaman in play and no access to counter catches on his side, I force him into a really awkward spot where he needs to be the aggressor as Gardevoir, while I just continue to build up my board, following up with back-to-back strong setup turns. Eventually choosing to take the lead and then refusing to let go of it until I win the set 2-0. Next up is another Grimmsnarl mirror, and once again we've got a really simple game 1. My mirror techs line up perfectly, and I'm able to consistently gust up his Monkey Dories and develop my board much faster than he can, leading to an easy win. But in game 2, he gets super far ahead when it comes to the Monkey Dory war, establishing 3 before I can even solidify my first. So I have to pivot my game plan. I give up on out-monkeying him and aim to wipe out his attackers. With some creative maths, I'm able to piece together a de-evolution play, leaving him with just a single Impidimp. He whiffs the rare candy to evolve it, and I'm able to chase down his final Marnie's Pokemon. Despite only having a single prize card left to take, I have functionally locked him out of attacking for the rest of the game. Or so I thought. He had one last trick up his sleeve. Luminous Energy. Fortunately, my board is set up in a way so that even with boss's orders, Mind Bend and Adrenabrain wouldn't be enough to win the game. But he can confuse my active to buy time while attempting to re-establish a Grimmsnarl. I flip 3 tails in a row while trying to get a successful attack through, and I'm genuinely starting to get worried. But I'm able to develop enough Monkey Dories to utilize the Mind Bend damage that's been racking up myself. And when I finally do flip heads to attack, it's enough to win the game. I go to check the pairings for round 6. It's a familiar name and not one I was hoping to hit so early in the tournament. John Eng, one of the best players in the US, and we've actually played before, earlier in the season at LAIC. where I won. We get to the table and there's already a couple judges standing around. We're going to be on stream. It's actually my first time playing on the official Pokemon stream. Australia has the absolute luxury of not having any kind of broadcast. So whether I'm winning a regionals or getting cooked in the finals, it's all happening on a little table off to the side. Something seriously needs to happen about this next season. Anyway, I get changed out of my iconic Toby shirt into a stream-safe play Pokemon one, put the white noise headphones on, and get ready for an incredible game. Why is it already over? Yeah, he bricked and scooped it up within the first couple turns, but surely this next game will be a battle to remember. Why is it over again? Did I seriously just win in under 10 minutes because he double bricked? Well, dubs are dubs, so I guess I'm 5-0-1 now. 3 more rounds today, and I only need to win one of them to guarantee a spot in day 2 of the tournament. Obviously, I want to do better than the bare minimum, but it's a nice safety net to reach. And next round is going to be a tough one. I've paired into Joltik Box, the one meta matchup that I was really hoping to dodge. I say meta, but no one who is seriously trying to win the tournament would actually play this deck. So I thought now that I was at the top tables, all of the Joltiks would have gone extinct, but I guess a few managed to high roll their way up here. If you can't tell, I do not like this deck at all. My primary win condition in this matchup is to establish a really quick Frostlass and Grimmsnarl, then gust up Iron Hands to get it off the board as soon as possible. I execute this perfectly in game 1, and he's only able to announce a single amp you very much. With some more Frostlass ticks and Monkey Dory maths, I'm able to secure game 1. In the second game, despite going first, which is usually a death sentence, I have a solid enough start to stay in it. Although I do have to commit to a line where I rely on dodging boss's orders on the final turn. So you can imagine the exact card he draws when I play Iono down to 2. It's fine though. Like I said, I'm incredibly unfavored when going first. It would have been a miracle to win that game. But what's not fine is how little time we have left. My opponent has been thinking way too long about each and every one of their decisions in what should honestly be a pretty simple and fast-paced matchup from their side. And I've had to compensate by playing much faster than I'd like to, leading to multiple minor misplays. In fact, it got so bad that without me even saying anything, one of the floor judges started timing his actions, which obviously resulted in a warning for slow play, but doesn't come with any kind of penalty beyond a 2-minute time extension. Even factoring this in, it's still a massive issue going into game 3. What you need to understand is that if he wins this next game, it should only take a few turns. Joltik to charge up some fellas, and then 2-2-2 with a combination of Iron Hands and Iron Leaves. Where if I were to win this game, it's a little less straightforward and will take at least a couple more turns. So regardless of if it was intentional slow play or he was just playing slowly, my opponent is now in a position where they'll almost definitely either win or at the very worst just take a tie. We draw our opening hands and mine is absolutely cracked. I'm playing down cards as fast as I can, and of course, we inevitably reach a position where I have game on board the following turn, but we end with a tie. I always try to assume the best of my opponents, so I hope that it wasn't malicious slow play. And I know that I'm not the fastest player in the world, but man, with Joltik, this cannot be happening. You gotta speed it up. These situations always feel awful, but if there's one piece of advice I can offer, it's that once the slip is signed, all you can do is move on and play your best for the remainder of the tournament. And that's exactly what I try to do. I'm up against a Dragapult Charizard, and I absolutely want to win this one, even more than usual. I just want to have day 2 locked up and avoid any need to stress over a win and in situation in the final round. Game 1 is really back and forth, but I make sure to avoid taking prizes whenever possible to reduce Charizard's potential damage output. And eventually I weave in a sick TM Devolution play that completely shuts my opponent out of the game. It was an interesting match where we both played well, so I won't lie, it's a bit anticlimactic that he just straight up bricked the next one. I completely ran him over with a turn 2 Rare Candy Grimmsnarl. I do love having the option to turn the jets on and just start attacking whenever I can capitalize on an opponent's poor start. So day 2 is locked up, but that's not going to make me any less keen for another dub in the final round. If I want to make top cut, every win matters. I'm paired into another Dragapult Charizard, and after last round, I'm feeling confident. I play game 1 in a similar way to the last, ensuring that I don't take too many prize cards and aim to line up a clean de-evolution play. The hands don't play out quite as nicely quickly here though. The game drags on and we each have some really awkward turns. But of course, I'm able to get the win. With only 20 minutes left on the clock and a matchup like this, I can tell you so many people would have just immediately started slow playing for the 1-0. But I was still taking my turns as quickly as possible and even continued to do all of my shuffling and prize checking during my opponent's turn. If this game stopped feeling winnable within the first few turns, I was just going to scoop it up and try and speedrun a game 3. But fortunately, my setup was solid and I committed to trying to win 2-0. The game plays out very similarly to the first, however, I'm not able to get a complete de-evolution wipe. Instead, settling for a position where he'll need to find Super Rod and Rare Candy off of an Iono to 4. Not impossible, but with only one copy of each left in his deck, I liked my odds. And like so many other times today, he managed to rip it, eventually closing out game 2 in the final turns of time. Obviously, I would have preferred to win this set, but I still think I feel better taking the tie than griming out a 1-0. And even if my opponent had agreed to a gentleman's, without being able to set up for game 3, there isn't anything we could have really based it on. It's all good though, with a final record of 6 wins, 0 losses, and 3 ties, I'm still in contention for top cut, as long as I can go undefeated in day 2. This sounds tough, and don't get me wrong, it is, but there are actually only 4 rounds in the second day of competition. And at the previous 2 international tournaments this season, I managed to go 3 wins and 1 loss both times. So with just a slight improvement, I'll be right up there in top A. Now, one thing I've neglected to mention so far is just how long these days are and how absolutely exhausted I've been for the last couple rounds. I got into the venue at around 8:30 in the morning. Then there was a whole opening ceremony before round 1. So after 9 consecutive grueling rounds, day 1 finished up at about 9:30 PM. With no lunch break for the Masters division, I'd been fighting through each of these intense matches on nothing but nut bars and Gatorades. It was time for a massive feed. I headed straight to Shake Shack with a bunch of the fellas, and it's always great to hear everyone's individual stories from these major events. So many incredible triumphs. So many people who clutched up and secured their Worlds invites. And some people who managed to lose 3 back-to-back win-in-ins for day 2. After absolutely destroying that burger, I head back to my accommodation to smash down some leftover pizza from the night before. I told you, I'm starving after these marathon-length day 1s. And the worst part is, I'm sitting all on my own because everyone else I'm staying with managed to bomb out. They're all drinking, having a great time, while I'm trying to be responsible by staying sober and getting some sleep before a whole nother day of competition. The sleep was as expected. I got up bright and early, ready to confidently win 4 sets in a row and lock up my spot in top cut. But my first roadblock of the day was drinking more of America's terrible coffee. Seriously, how do you guys drink this stuff? I need the caffeine, so I down it anyway, but at least in Melbourne it tastes good. Oh, and then I paired Yuho. Not only did he win an international championships last year, but he also managed to top cut another one in the same season, an absolutely incredible player. Obviously, we were each aware that at our current scores, a tie would take us both out of top cut contention. So we immediately agreed that no matter what, one of us would walk away with a win. He's on Gardevoir, so I'm feeling pretty confident, and game 1 starts off great. I've got a massive lead, and he's forced into a desperation line relying on Monkey Dory's Mind Bend Confusion. Normally, I'd be fine to just retreat into my second Grimmsnarl and attack with that instead. But in this case, the second fella is still hanging out in the prizes. And I made the critical mistake of not preloading enough energy onto my Morgrim for a corkscrew punch. So I'm forced to flip for the confusion, and I hit Tails. The beginning of this game's downfall. This single whiffed turn lets him sneak back into the game and re-establish a Gardevoir EX. Couple this with a really unfortunate Iono that bricked my hand, and that's the end of game 1. But before we can even start setting up for the second game, a judge stops us. We both have our decks taken away to be checked. This is to ensure that we are in fact running the same 60 card lists that we submitted online, and also to check for any marked cards or suspicious sleeve issues. We both pass with flying colors. Thanks, Dragon Shield. Game 2 goes a lot smoother, and with access to both my Grimmies, I'm able to easily work around those cheeky mind bends, tying things up at 1-1. However, going into Game 3, there are only a few minutes left. But like I mentioned before, we've both agreed to determine a winner based on whoever has the prize lead at the end of time. It's a really unfortunate way to resolve what is such a complex matchup, but it is the most clear-cut way to decide. And would you believe it? I mulliganed 3 times. Now we've only got a minute to set up. But my opening hand is strong, and it's looking like I'll be able to get a turn 2 rare candy attack with Grimmsnarl as long as I don't get Iono'd. He isn't able to disrupt me, and time is called right at the end of his turn. I'm able to rip the rare candy and establish Grimmsnarl, taking that first knockout on my penultimate turn. As long as he doesn't immediately respond with something insane like rare candy Gardevoir, Bravery Charm, 5 energy Drifloon, plus Monkey Dory Adrenabrain, I'm in the clear. And would you believe it, he plays the most insane Professor's Research that I have ever witnessed. I hold my breath and nah, I'm just kidding, he whiffed. I would have loved to play out a full 3-game set against such an accomplished opponent. And I think you get it by now that time rules kinda suck. But I just wanted to make a point to thank Yuho for honoring our gentleman's agreement. Obviously, I would have done the same if he'd been the one to take the prize lead. It's just a form of mutual respect. 1 win down, 3 to go, but my next opponent was not only the toughest that I had paired at this tournament so far, but maybe in my entire career to date. Henry Chow. If that name doesn't sound familiar, you probably haven't watched any of the American Regional Championships this season, because he's won 3 of them and came second at another. He's been playing genuinely one of, if not the greatest season in Pokemon TCG history, and was absolutely looking to cap it off with an international win. But I was standing in his way. We set up for game 1. My opening hand is pretty solid, and I'm bracing myself for a long, drawn-out matchup of Gardevoir versus Grimmsnarl. So I start things off by playing a Nest Ball for Impidimp and offer to do my prize checking on his turn to save time. Cool, all my Marnie's Pokemon are accounted for. All my Dark Energy are there. Shaman, Pheasantipity, Badoo, all there. Must be something prized. I look over to my prizes. Yep, 6 face-down cards. What could possibly be missing? Where are my Monkey Dories? I frantically flick through my deck a couple more times. Yep, there are no Monkey Dories in there. An absolute nightmare. Yep, I managed to prize all 3. The odds are about 1 in 1,711. Perfect. It's fine though, I'll just set them up later after I take my first 2 prizes. Why are all 3 of them in the last 4 prize cards? Despite my simian deficiency, I actually do manage to keep the game pretty competitive. Although without any monkeys to heal up my fellas, the damage on my benched Pokemon from his monkeys eventually racks up. And it all comes down to me needing to high roll off of an Ionoda 2, something so many of my opponents did yesterday. I'll need a combination of boss's orders and some way to find another Grimmsnarl. This sounds unlikely, but Night Stretcher, Spikemuth Gym, and Ultra Ball will all find me Grimmsnarl, so the only hard part is boss's orders. Plus, Pheasantipity is online, so a Nest Ball would let me see an additional 3 cards. But I don't get there and lose game 1. And then, in game 2, I make a bit of a mistake. At this point, I don't know Henry's full list, but with 4 monkeys and TM Turbo Energize, I could tell that setting up Frostlass wasn't a good idea. However, since I was forced to open Snorunt in the active and had easy access to Frostlass, plus I knew that if I wanted to finish the set, I'd need to accelerate the game in some way so that I wouldn't get 1-0'd. I decided to just commit to the Freezing Shroud, and it was actually paying off. He didn't have a great start, and an early Iono appeared to make him brick. However, I was also left with an unpleasant hand. I just couldn't reach Grimmsnarl, at least not without playing an Iono of my own, and that would resuscitate his dead hand. We were at somewhat of a stalemate, either draw and pass until I find some way to get attacking, or bite the bullet and play Iono. I play down that supporter with the hope that I'll draw into a Grimmsnarl out and be able to take the initiative. Like I said before, I really needed to accelerate this game. And I whiffed, giving him access to a fresh 6 cards that he was really happy to see. After I dropped the Iono, Henry literally said that he would have scooped if I'd managed to attack without giving him a new hand. The rest of the game is pretty messy, but I lose a couple of turns to getting my Frostlass trapped with a counter-catcher Iono play. And that seals the game and the set. It is absolutely devastating to be out of top cut contention. This whole trip, that was my goal. Top 8. And now the reality finally hits that it's no longer possible. But I can't lose focus just yet. If I win the next 2, there is still good cash to be made. After playing these 2 absolute titans, you'd think I get a break from pairing other top players. But I immediately hit Caleb Getimer. I don't even think I need to say anything, just scroll through this man's near endless limitless page. In game 1, I managed to TM Evo into double Frostlass on turn 1. This is the perfect start against Raging Bolt Noctowl. At least, I think he's playing Noctowl. It's hard to tell when he is completely bricking and doesn't manage to evolve a single Hoot Hoot. The Freezing Shroud damage rapidly racks up and he scoops game 1. Then in game 2, he is somehow completely bricked again. This man doesn't seek a single duel the entire set. I would have loved to play a proper match against such a great opponent. But I'm also not upset about lucking out in one of Grimmsnarl's less than ideal matchups. Just one more win for the money, and speaking of money, I'm up against a Goldengo player. I hadn't played the matchup all weekend, but I'm actually pretty confident in it. The extra Night Stretcher allows me to extend Badoo chains, and de-evolution can be devastating when the Frostlass damage racks up. In game 1, I'm able to abuse Gimmighoul's 2 retreat cost with a combination of Countercatcher, Iono, and Badoo's Itchy Pollen. With the little fella stuck in the active, I'm able to buy enough time for my Frostlass ticks to take a massive chunk out of their Goldengos. Once I've racked up enough damage, I close out the game with a couple of Shadow Bullets to win on prizes. In the next game, I immediately set up double Frostlass and then Badoo for 8 consecutive turns, completely locking them out of their Tech Inclusion picnic basket and turning attacking with coin bonus into an absolute chore. Although they were eventually able to boss up and KO both of my Frostlass, by that point, the damage was done. I ended the game with a devastating de-evolution, removing all 3 of their Goldengos simultaneously, leaving them without a single Pokemon in play and winning the set. I already knew that that win would guarantee me top 64. $2,000 cash, it's not bad. But what I didn't realize was just how insane my resistance was from all my incredible opponents. I actually managed to bubble into top 32 at 30th place, netting me an extra $1,000. No complaints here. But another international where I was just a single win away from top cut has me itching to run it back. I know that I can do it. It's just a matter of time. And my next chance is going to be at the most important one, the World Championships in August. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss the insane decklist photo that I take after winning that one. Hey, thanks for sticking all the way through. And don't forget, there's even more Grimmothy Snarl content in my hour-long deep dive for all the wonderful Tier 2 channel members and Patreon supporters. Cheers.